Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. And make sure to use code ECSI at sign-up. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good evening, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the FedEx St. Jude Championship with the greatest golf expert in the world, in my eyes, Mr. Brady Kannon. And the playoffs are here, 3 weeks. I cannot believe how quick the season went. I really don't. Shout out to our new sponsor, VIPclub.lv. Always use ECSI at the checkout. Tell them JD sent you, and they'll take good care of you. Tonight, myself and Brady will break down this event, hopefully get you situated for this 3-week run. I was talking to him behind the stage, how in one of my one and dones, having Russell Henley, and it just still stings, you know. It looks like one of my shots lands short of the green or in the middle of the green and just spins back and just happens to find a divot with a one-shot lead, by the way. But that's past. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, good to be with you once again. And, I can commiserate. I bet Russell Henley midway through the tournament. And it's the second time I've been burned by this guy. It was back in 2021 when I played him pre-tournament, and I can't remember what the number was, probably in the neighborhood of 35, 40 to 1, something like that. And he had a 3-shot lead with 8 holes left to play on the back 9. Ended up shooting 4 over on the back 9 and didn't even make a 6-man playoff. Came up a stroke short of the playoff. Again, the back 9, his curse in 2023, as well as he bogeyed the final 3 holes. It seems this guy just has a mental block in being able to close out the Wyndham Championship. It's going to take a lot for me to bet him again, because I mean, this is becoming a little bit of a pattern for him. He's dominated this tournament in 2 out of the last 3 years and then just can't hold on down the stretch. So that was disappointing. And then to add further, we talked about Lee Hodges, how, I landed on him for the Scottish Open as a real long shot. And he ended up finishing 12th and cashing a top 20 for us. And then a couple weeks later, of course, he wins outright. Well, of course, I had Lucas Glover at the 3M Open, and he wins the following week. So I premature tipulation has been a problem for me this year.
Sounds like my baseball games. I'll take 2 games last night, 2 team totals say over, nowhere to be found. Get off of them the next day, and sure enough, box the wire by the 3rd inning, and both teams go flying over. I'm either one day ahead, one day behind. So we've really pumped the brakes on the baseball market.
Well, the good news is, if we're going to put a positive spin on it, we're on the right track. And let's also be realistic. Hitting outrights is rare and difficult. And, if you can cash those top 20s and hit the head-to-head matchups, that's where you make your money. The glory is with the outrights. That's where all the fun is. But really, when it comes to, responsible sports betting, the other markets are going to be more profitable for you in the long run. But again, we haven't been that far off in the outright market. So, let's hope we nail it. Let's hope we get the right guy in the right week this week. No more round peg in the square box.
No. And we got, as you like to say, and I like to say, obviously an elevated tournament. The top 70 were invited. Before we dive in, Mr. Justin Thomas just needed it. Couldn't have hit a better shot, hits the pin and bounces out, finishes 71st. Long term, good to get this break, or would you wanted to see him stuck on 70 at least playing this week?
Well, I don't know if I care if I was seeing him play this week or not. My vote would be to not put him on the Ryder Cup team.
Okay.
I think probably Ricky Fowler is more deserving, and maybe even one or two other guys. But I'll tell you what, I tip my cap to the man for the effort he put up at the Wyndham and the thrill that he gave us all. You couldn't have asked for a more dramatic finish. I mean, you described the shot there. It hits off the pin, it rolls away about 6 inches, and that separates him from getting into the postseason. And he falls to his knees, and I mean, that was pretty awesome, and I give him a lot of credit for, the effort. I mean, the guy obviously has not been playing well. Coming into the Wyndham, he had missed 5 of his last 7 starts, missed the cut in 5 of his last 7 starts. And he had a good tournament going. He was right on the cusp of a top 10 finish there heading into Sunday. I thought he would play another good round. The scores were a little higher on Sunday, it seemed. A little bit of weather in the air and that type of thing. Guys just were not going as low on Sunday, JT included. But you really can't ask for much more drama and excitement than the way he thrilled us all there on the 18th hole. And it was unfortunate for him, but I think cool for myself as a fan to watch the way that unfolded. It's better than something that is, anticlimactic. That was certainly a thrill to watch.
Lastly, I just read a blurb, so maybe you can fill me in. I guess there was a big meeting last night with the tour, some of the players with Monahan, and Rory elected to hit the gym and I guess worked his butt off for a couple hours, came in as the meeting was wrapping up all sweaty. Is that Rory being Rory and real upset what's going on? Or was he just making a statement like, don't bother me, I'm on a mission here as we try to, win this tournament, win the FedEx Cup for the next 3 weeks?
I have not read about that part. I did read that, the merger between LIV and the PGA Tour is maybe a lot further off than we once thought, and maybe it won't even happen. That's disappointing. I don't know. Rory, we know the grueling, month, 2 months, 3 months that he went through, really being the torchbearer for the PGA Tour and the loyalty factor there, and trying to, keep guys in his camp and not, have them defect to the LIV Series. And we also know he has come out and said that wore on him mentally and physically. So maybe that was part of it. He's kind of taken a break. He's had a little bit of enough of this stuff for a while, and let's get to the end of the season. Let's get to the Ryder Cup and then, recharge the batteries, and maybe he'll show up on time next time. But probably a little bit of fatigue would be my guess without knowing any further detail.
Lastly, excited, don't care, as I think Jim Furyk says, well, it didn't count anyways. Bryson DeChambeau with a 58.
Well, I've read a lot about it, and if you look at the strokes gained metrics and the fact that, it's a 54-hole event, it's hard to discredit a 58. But I've seen a lot of facts out there saying, maybe this was not quite as impressive as it looks on the surface. And that's probably about as far as you need to go with it. And I think there's some truth to that, but still, it's still a 58, which is remarkable. And let's give credit to Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, it's hard to nitpick a 58, but I have read that maybe it wasn't quite the 58 that we would see on the PGA Tour or what have you, as far as strokes gained, and obviously a full 72 holes played and that type of thing. But again, that's a little bit nitpicky. I mean, the guy shot 58, period.
To the right of me, I'm looking at DraftKings. Scotty Scheffler, the favorite, at plus 600. Rory at plus 900 with John Rahm. Cantlay plus 1600. Xander 1800. Victor at 2000. Tyrell Hatton at plus 2200. Colin Morikawa at 2200. Wyndham Clark at 2800 with Tommy Fleetwood, Ricky Fowler, and Jason Day at plus 3,000 there. I'm looking at spank odds. I'm looking at the head-to-heads, which you break down very uh, do so well, and I just find a couple numbers just blow me away. Scotty Scheffler minus 145 versus Rory at plus 122, and then Scheffler at minus 140 with John Rahm at plus 120. Yeah, horses for courses. Is this Scheffler just living off of what he's done all year, or does this course set up real nice for Scotty?
I think it's a little bit of both, Jeff. Scheffler is and has been really all season the best ball striker in the game. And I believe this course favors ball striking more so than just about any other course on tour, or most of them anyway. So that is certainly in Scotty's favor. He went on that run where, what did he have? 7 tournaments in a row where he finished top 5. So obviously the guy has been in incredible form. And it's not to say Rahm and Rory haven't. I actually did see a very well-respected bettor take Rahm plus 125 over Scheffler. And I have to kind of agree, I think certainly plus 110 might not be enough. Maybe plus 115 isn't enough. But when you get to plus 125, I think that, raises a little bit of a green light there, because is there really that much separation between John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler? I haven't seen on anything on the Scheffler versus Rory, and maybe that's a little bit indicative of Rory's attitude coming in. Now he's the defending FedEx Cup champion, and maybe he's kind of saving it for Eastlake. I don't know. That one is just a stay away for me. But the Rahm plus, if you can find the 125, I don't think the 120 is awful. But 125 certainly looks like a pretty good bet to me in a pairing of two players that are pretty darn equal.
Yes. We usually try to grab the plus money there, like you said. In my eyes, if I could get plus 125 on Rory and plus 125 on Rahm, and one of them beats Scheffler, I'm still making a quarter on the deal. So I have no problem with that.
Yep. Not a bad plan right there either.
Top 70 play next week down to 50. So I guess we should say that we're playing for 20 spots here, right? The guys that are 70 to 51 are trying to get inside the top 50, correct?
Absolutely. And that's a wide margin. If you're 51 through 70, you're going to probably have to at least have a top 10 finish, and maybe even better than that. Obviously, the further down the list you go, it might require a top 5 finish. So those guys that are, past, say, 55, they've got to have their pedal to the metal for this tournament and really make some noise to advance to next week for sure. And it's the same thing the following week. You go from 50 to 30. So the guys that are sitting away from the bubble, if you will, further away from the bubble than closer, they've got some ground to make up, and probably some pressure on those guys as well.
Well, the fairway's yours, my friend. Take it away.
Well, first of all, this golf course has received a lot of high praise over the years from a lot of tour players. It's been a tour stop since 1989. This will be just the second year that it's a FedEx Cup playoff stop. But a lot of players feel this is such a good, challenging, fair test of golf. They really like this golf course. It's not terribly long, just over 7,200 yards, narrow fairways, zoysia grass fairways, some very penal Bermuda grass rough bordering the fairways, smaller greens. You're going to miss some greens. You've got to be able to scramble well. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, it kind of caters to a ball striker more than a lot of standard PGA Tour courses do. Firm and fast Bermuda greens. One thing that's interesting, there is rain in the forecast, some thunder showers on Wednesday and Thursday, and then again on Saturday and Sunday. So if they do get some moisture and it softens this golf course up a little bit, it's certainly going to be easier for all these guys. That'll keep some balls in the fairway, and they'll be able to throw some more darts at these greens without having balls, bounce and run off the back or what have you. But it should be a great test. Your winning score proposition this week from our friend Jeff Sherman at the Westgate was 264.5, which means 15.5 under par. I actually went under 264.5. I think they're going to get to 16 or better. I mentioned the weather. I think that will soften up the golf course a little bit. And we talked about, the elevated event. It's not necessarily technically an elevated event, but we have an elevated field with the top 70 players in the FedEx Cup standings. So I think it's going to be an elite player that wins again. We've seen that trend in the majors and the designated events this year. It's been the cream of the crop that has won these events for the most part. Probably 10 out of 14 or more for sure have won these tournaments with big time fields involved. And so I think we'll get probably another big time player here. And I think we'll get to 16 under par or better.
Well, again, with the odds, with everything that's going on, the back of my head says, well, the guy that's sitting comfortably in the top 10, 15, probably 20, yeah, I'm going to go out and win this tournament. But, might struggle out of the gate or have a bad Friday. Is there a mindset here for, the big dogs that, let's just say, let's pick a Cantlay or a Xander that comes out of the gate +4, +5. They know they're playing next week. Is there any strategy in looking at some of these guys that are safely in for next week as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm not sure how to analyze it, but I can tell you one thing that I think is important. None of these guys are going to give up on Thursday because there's no cut. Okay, they get to play all 4 rounds, so you could probably play 3 out of the 4 days really well here and still win. So, if you do have one bad round, it's not time to just pack up camp and go home just yet because there is no cut. So, maybe your question caters to some in-game betting, if you will, because you can probably get pretty good odds on a guy that gets off to a rough start. But again, the tournament is a long way from over. It's not going to end on Friday for these guys that get off to a rough start. There's a lot of chance for them to rebound.
All right. Outright winners, sir.
Well, we're going to start with my shortest shot, Viktor Hovland, who I got at 22-1. He's had a great year. Top 20 finish in the U.S. Open, top 15 at the British Open. Of course, a couple months ago, we won the Memorial. He is a fantastic ball striker, one of the best in the PGA Tour rankings for total driving, length, and accuracy. And that's what you need here. The last 36 rounds, he ranks 6th in this field for strokes gained tee to green and 6th for strokes gained ball striking. So Viktor Hovland, the only weakness for Hovland, not necessarily the putting, but the chipping is probably his biggest weakness, even though he has improved quite a bit this year versus past seasons. But it didn't keep him from winning the Memorial. It didn't keep him from contending at the Masters. I mean, the guy's he was right there at the PGA Championship. And the PGA Championship is a major that, again, typically caters to ball strikers. And this course, as I've mentioned, does so as well. So I think Hovland's a pretty good fit here. The next one I went with was Ricky Fowler at 30-1, and I've seen as high as 35. I was impatient. I thought it might go the other way, but I did see it get to 35. But I was early to the party and took 30 there. The guy's had a fantastic year. We've talked about it on the show many times. He has 8 top 10 finishes. And after he missed the cut at the PGA Championship, if you look what Ricky did, he went on that run. He was like 6th at Colonial. I think he was 9th at the Memorial. He had like 4 top 10 finishes in a row. And then he wins the Rocket Mortgage for his first win in almost 4.5 years. So the guy has been really building some momentum, as the summer started and into July. And he was not bad at the British Open or the Scottish Open either. I would say certainly better than pedestrian. And, it might be time for him to, rejuvenate the game once again, because he's had just a little bit of a lull, hasn't been off, not like he's out of form or anything. But again, I think this is another course that fits a guy that's very good in total driving, very good in ball striking, and better than Hovland as far as the short game. One of the best putters in the field, also one of the best scramblers in the field is Ricky Fowler. If you look at his last 36 rounds, 10th in this field for strokes gained approach and 4th for strokes gained tee to green. The other thing, we talked about it briefly earlier, Ricky is the favorite to be the captain's selection for the Ryder Cup. But he's got to kind of lock that spot up with a good week here. I think if he finishes top 10, there's no doubt about it. So I expect Ricky to contend, and that's an intangible, if you will. I don't want to base my entire handicap on that type of thing. But he knows he's in the driver's seat, and he's going to have to come up with another good performance to really secure that position. And I think a top 10 finish will certainly do that. Both Hovland, Ricky Fowler, all my outrights. I bet him outright and for a top 20. I think Ricky's a pretty good bet to finish top 20. After that, I went with Wyndham Clark, your U.S. Open winner. And here's another thing, Jeff. We talked about it where I expect an elite player to win this week. Wyndham Clark has, vaulted himself into that company. I mean, he won the Wells Fargo, which was an elevated event, and he won the U.S. Open. And this guy has had that combination for his entire career of length off the tee and a terrific short game. And he's finally been able to now bring the mental side into it and figure out how to win golf tournaments. And I got him at 40-1, 8th in this field on the par fours, strokes gained on the par fours, measuring between 450 and 500 yards, which is the majority of the par fours. 12 par fours on a par 70 track here. And Wyndham Clark, one of the best in the field on the par fours, the majority of the holes on this golf course. Then I went with Hideki Matsuyama at 45-1. Again, I probably could have gotten 50 there, but settled for 45. He was second back here in 2021. Last 36 rounds, 7th in this field for strokes gained approach, 3rd in hole proximity from 175 to 200 yards, and 9th for strokes gained ball striking. I mentioned the approach distance there for Matsuyama, 175 to 200. Most of the approach shots here this week will come from 125 to 200. So that window there is where you want your guys to be able to stick it close. And then finally, one longer bomb on Corey Connors at 65-1. And I've even seen as high as 70. Victor Hovland was really the only guy I got the best number on. All of these guys I could have gotten about $5 higher. But for Corey Connors, again, we go back to ball striking, one of the very best ball strikers in the world. And we go back to the PGA Championship, typically a ball striker type major setup. And he was right there in contention all the way until the end. The tough part for Connors is the short game. He's 130th or something in scrambling, not that great with the flat stick. But again, you can just hope that he gets hot for a couple days. If he's average in scrambling and putting, and he's, at his normal level for ball striking, he's going to be right there once again.
I heard a name which I've never had success with, and I'm not saying he's the sexy name this week on social media, but they said, like you said with Wyndham Clark, they kind of compared the two. What's your initial thoughts on Mr. Fitzpatrick on this course?
Yeah, I've seen some buzz about him as well because he's had good success here, and I almost added him to my list, but I never seem to have good luck. Rarely. I do remember one time I added John Rahm at the 11th hour, and he went on to win the Memorial. But rarely do the guys that I add come through. And I got burned on it again last week. I added Davis Riley late, and I think he missed the cut. So I didn't want to go down that road again. I don't think he's a bad pick at all. He just hasn't really been in great form ever since he won the RBC Heritage. It's really been kind of an odd year. I believe at the start of the year, there were possibly some neck issues that he was dealing with. But I don't think he's really made a lot of noise for the better part of the season. And so I don't all of a sudden want to jump on him here because he's got good course history. I think, I like the 5 guys that I have. There's a number of guys that you can pick this week, like there is any week, but I think it's going to be an elite player. I think you can probably look at, the top 25 or 30 on the points list and take your pick. And hopefully you get one, out of the 6 or 7 that you landed on.
And before we get into the head-to-head and first-round leaders, a young golfer that I absolutely love, when you talk ball striking, I think of Victor, I think of Joaquin Neiman, I think of a few others. This gentleman just is struggling in my eyes, and I'm kind of wanted your thoughts on it. Is it just, I know there was a potential little injury, and I expect more from this kid, and that's Morikawa. What has happened to him this year overall with only 3 weeks to go?
He's an interesting story, not quite as dramatic, I guess, as Matthew Fitzpatrick. Colin Morikawa has been more up and down, where I think for the most part, Fitzpatrick has been down. Of course, he does have that one win. Morikawa starts the season, looks like he's going to just lap the field at Kapalua. He blows that. And then he comes back at Torrey Pines in the Genesis and has 2 top 10 finishes, big boy golf courses, plays tremendous, does well at the Masters. He's done well in all the major championships. Did not play too well, if I recall, at the British Open, but in the 3 majors prior, did play very well. Now, one of the best iron players in the game, one of the best ball strikers in the game. It should work for him this week. And I've seen a lot of people that I respect on him, but he just didn't make my card because he does seem a little bit popular. You know how we don't like to necessarily be on the popular plays. And Victor Hovland, I think, is somewhat popular, not the most popular. But I have seen a lot of people on Hovland, and I've seen a few people on Wyndham Clark. But that's going to happen again when you're looking at, say, the top 30 players in this field. There's going to be some crossover selections. But Morikawa, I'm not feeling it. The guys I selected, let's say maybe other than Matsuyama, Corey Connors has a win in Texas a little bit earlier this year. I think that was back in May. Played pretty well at the Canadian Open. Matsuyama's been a little bit hot and cold, did really well at the Open Championship, but then missed the cut last week at the 3M Open. So he's been a little bit up and down. But Victor Hovland, Ricky Fowler, and Wyndham Clark, you can't find 3 much hotter players over the course of this summer. So I went with a little bit of recent form there as a part of my handicap, and Colin Morikawa does not necessarily have recent form.
Yeah, I remember our good friend and colleague Rick Gaiman. I think it was the last major, actually, out in California, and he was on the course. He was following Colin for maybe the front 9 or back 9 or something. And he goes, there's a certain sound that you hear when he's hitting the driver or hitting an iron off the tee. And it's just seemed like it's just this little fraction. It wasn't that crisp sound that he was used to hearing.
Yeah, I think I read that as well. I think that was a tweet that Rick sent out. And I thought that was, insightful. And I agree with him. There is a certain sound. It's like the crack of the bat in baseball. Sometimes there's guys that you can just tell who hit that. And I think that's similar with Morikawa. And I don't know. I have not been there in person, but I'll trust Rick if he says the sound is off a bit. And, the guys had some good tournaments in between. But again, I went with guys that have been hotter throughout this summer than Colin has.
I love it. I love it. Head-to-head first-round leader, whatever's easier for you to do.
Yeah, the head-to-head matchups, and I'm missing my list here, but I can remember them, I believe, off the top of my head. I went with Emiliano Grillo, and I'm trying to think who he's paired up against now. He was Lucas Glover. A little bit of a fade of last week's winner, Lucas Glover, and nothing against Glover. He obviously played extremely well. The putting has really turned around for him with that new putter that he got, but that victory appeared to be very emotional. And, vaulting himself into the top 70. This guy was 112th in the FedEx Cup points before that win last week. So this was a huge turn of events for him and understandably emotional. So I could see a little bit of a letdown for Glover, and Grillo's been really hot this year. Of course, won at Colonial and has had a few other good finishes as well, including the Open Championship. So Grillo over Lucas Glover. I went with Wyndham Clark over Jason Day. And then I believe that price was minus 125 over Jason Day, maybe minus 130. And then I also went with Tommy Fleetwood plus 110 over Tyrrell Hatton. Not that Hatton is not going to play well this week. I think both Hatton and Fleetwood will play well, but I thought plus 110 was too much to give Tommy as far as the price.
Before we started to dig in, when I was reading on DraftKings, the leaderboard for the favorites, I thought one of the outliers was Tyrell Hatton. Sometimes you see a name that you don't expect to see there at that price. I think it was 28-1. I thought in between a couple of guys that I thought would be there. You talked about Wyndham Clark, obviously, as one of them. So when I see those, I start to say, well, what do they know that I don't know here?
Well, Hatton's had a tremendous year. And I've backed him on a couple of different occasions. He was second at the Players Championship. This guy has really been one of the top players on any tour in the world in 2023. But he just has that one PGA Tour win. I was on him at 66-1 when he won at Bay Hill in an absolute tornado on Sunday. But that's the only PGA Tour win he has. And Tommy Fleetwood is in a similar boat where he doesn't have a win on tour yet, to his credit. But I kind of lean more towards Fleetwood this week, and obviously played him at plus money there in the head-to-head matchup. Hatton, a lot of people, I think, are kind of resting on the results that he's had, but still, the guy has not kicked the door down. Tommy's been arguably closer. Tommy was in a playoff at the Canadian Open and got bombed by a 70-foot eagle putt, So you could argue that those guys are extremely equal. And so if you're going to give me plus 110, I'll take it.
And first round leaders.
Well, back to Fleetwood. Went with Tommy Fleetwood, a top 10 in his last 5 starts, including that loss in the playoff in Canada. He was 4th here at TPC Southwind in 2019. Last 36 rounds, all the stats that I looked at this week, Jeff, probably about 7 or 8 of them. He didn't rank lower than or higher than 28th in the field in any of them. So the guy was just good across the board in everything that I looked at this week. And as far as first round leader, since the Masters, he has had 2 opening rounds in which he gained 5 or more strokes on the field. And he's also played 4 rounds here at Southwind in which he gained 3 or more strokes on the field. So some first round leader trends and also some good history at this golf course. And then a couple of guys that I also played in the outright market. I played for first round leader, Ricky Fowler. I mentioned after missing the cut, he's been red hot after missing the cut at the PGA Championship. I talked about his stats the last 36 rounds. He was 15th in this field in 2020, and he opened that week with a 64. Now, 62 has been the first round leader number the last 4 years in a row at this golf course. And that's when you've had fields much larger than 70. If the moisture is going to soften up this place, I think even with 70 players, you can get to 62. Ricky got to 64 in 2020. Hopefully he gets to 62 on Thursday. Since 2018, 3 times he has shot rounds here at TPC Southwind in which he's gained 3 or more strokes on the field. He's also 11th on tour in first round scoring. And then finally, I went with Wyndham Clark. I mentioned, he's long off the tee, and he's also a very good putter and a scrambler. The last 36 rounds, he's 24th in this field for putting on firm and fast Bermuda greens. He's also 7th in scrambling, and I mentioned 8th for strokes gained on those par 4s between 450 and 500 yards. Since the Masters, he's opened a tournament with a round that has gained 3 or more strokes on the field 5 times. So he's come out of the gates quickly on a number of occasions this season. And then also, like Ricky Fowler, he ranks 11th on tour in first round scoring average.
Love it, love it, love it. Next week, top 50. Where are we heading?
Yeah, we're going to just outside of Chicago to Olympia Fields for the BMW Championship. As you mentioned, the top 50 in what will be a reshuffled FedEx Cup standings at the conclusion of the FedEx St. Jude Championship. And it was a few years ago when they had this same BMW at Olympia Fields. And I was actually on Jon Rahm when he made that miraculous putt on the first playoff hole against Dustin Johnson. And what a finish that was. DJ makes an incredible putt to get into the playoff, and then Rahm makes a long bomb to win the playoff. It was just an exhilarating finish. And you and I talked about it a little bit backstage before the show. I haven't done all my research on Olympia Fields. It was a few years ago that I did so. I haven't looked ahead just yet. But, what I recall, I remember Matsuyama being in the mix, I believe, DJ Rahm. There was a lot of guys at the top of that leaderboard that were bombers. I think that's the one thing I recall, and I'll keep that in mind when I do my handicap next week. This course seemed to favor the bombers a little more so than the shorter knockers.
You can follow Brady at Las Vegas Golfer, at GolfBet, at PGA Tour, Sports Grid tonight at 10:15. Go follow him at Heat Strokes Pod. Go over to YouTube, subscribe. It's free. Anything else to tell the fellow followers as we get wrapped up here with the last 3 weeks of the PGA?
I think we covered it, my friend. One little programming note, though, if you will. I will be on Sports Grid at 9:12 this evening, not 10:12. I got bumped an hour earlier. I'll be preceding the mayor of Las Vegas, Mr. Dave Sharapan.
From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, from the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer, at Heat Strokes Pod, on Sports Grid tonight at 9:12. Please go and follow him there. Everyone, best of luck. Let's cash some tickets, and we will see you soon.